Imagine an entire state government, billions of dollars, millions of people just grinding to an absolute screeching halt. All because of one empty chair, a literal 101 to 101 deadlocked tie where absolutely nothing can pass. That is exactly what just happened, and the race to break this freeze ended up changing everything.
When State Representative Matthew Gergely suddenly passed away, the Pennsylvania House crashed into a perfect 101 to 101 tie. And because the state Senate was held by a comfortable Republican majority, this single vacant seat instantly became the ultimate gatekeeper for state-level power. The structural deadlock threatened to completely freeze the governor's policy agenda and stall massive multi-billion-dollar budget negotiations. 0 bills could pass. Everything was riding on how one specific district would vote to break the tie.
So, a high-stakes special election was called in Pennsylvania's 35th district to break the gridlock. But to actually understand why this exact race became such an explosive battleground, we've got to look at the ground itself.
This district sits right in the Mon Valley, where the rivers meet. We're talking about the historic engine room of the American steel boom. The culture here is deeply working class, multi-generational, and historically incredibly loyal to the Democratic Party. I mean, registered Democrats outnumber Republicans here by more than 2 to 1.
But when those steel mills closed down, they left behind some severe economic pain, population loss, and municipal blight. And right now you've got this massive friction playing out on the ground. Traditional generation-deep party loyalty is slamming headfirst into real-world economic survival and inflation. Working-class voters are opening up to conservative populist messaging, and recently the historic margins here have dropped noticeably. It's turning this old steel region into a highly contested political environment.
And the human impact driving this tension is absolutely wild. Everyday families and seniors on fixed incomes were just hit with a 36% spike in Allegheny County property taxes. 36%, squeezing budgets that are already tight. On top of that, state taxpayers have had to foot over $4.4 million just running these frequent off-cycle special elections. And the anxiety goes beyond taxes. Down in neighboring Butler, union steelworkers just mounted this intense bipartisan campaign against federal energy efficiency rules, warning that new regulations could kill over 1,100 high-wage manufacturing jobs. That's the pressure cooker this election was dropped into.
So, election night wraps up, and the headlines make it look like just another Tuesday. The Democratic candidate, a local detective supervisor named Dan Goughnour, secures a decisive victory, capturing over 63% of the vote against Republican Charles Davis and Libertarian Adam Kidda. He gets sworn in, the party officially claws back its narrow one-seat majority, and its case closed, right?
Well, not even close. When you actually dig into the certified data, this massive red flag pops up. Look at the numbers between the previous special election in 2023 and this one in 2025. The Democratic vote count stayed almost completely flat, but the Republican margin significantly tightened in a district that is historically considered completely uncompetitive.
Here is the plot twist. Republican turnout didn't just grow, it exploded by a massive 162% compared to the previous special election. Conservative voter mobilization surged, chopping the historic margin of victory from over 7,600 votes just a few years ago down to just over 3,000. It proves the political ground is accelerating rapidly away from historical baselines. The quiet majority in these regions might not be as quiet as people think.
Now you might be wondering, why was preventing that surge and holding this exact seat an absolute existential requirement for Democrats? It comes down to a hidden constitutional loophole. Think about it. How do you bypass a governor's veto? Under Pennsylvania law, if a single party controls both legislative chambers, they can pass constitutional amendments directly to the ballot with a simple majority vote in consecutive sessions, completely bypassing the governor. So holding this seat was the literal veto shield against a Republican Senate.
And the policy clash hanging in the balance was massive. These two sides were pushing entirely different visions for the state. You had the Democratic House laser-focused on major increases in K-12 public education funding and backing clean energy initiatives. Right across the hall, the Republican Senate was aggressively advocating for expanding school choice, protecting cybercharter funding, and deregulating energy markets to preserve those local manufacturing jobs.
When those two immovable forces collided, that razor-thin 102 to 101 majority bought a massive legislative war. The split legislature triggered a grueling 130-day budget standoff. We're talking about months of bitter gridlock dragging through the summer and fall. The House rejected Senate spending cuts, the Senate accused the House of lacking consensus, and crucially, this gridlock actively delayed funding for local public schools and mass transit systems across the state before a compromise was finally signed in November. But here is the craziest part. Underneath all of this massive state-level maneuvering, 25%. That was the voter turnout in the 35th district. Think about that for a second. The laws, the taxes, and the entire policy direction for millions of Pennsylvanians were effectively decided by a tiny, hyper-motivated 25% sliver of the electorate. It shifts the entire political strategy to one single question: who can motivate their base the most effectively?
And to see how that strategy is evolving, we just have to look at a concurrent race. Over in the strongly conservative Lancaster County Senate District 36, Democrat James Malone pulled off a major upset, winning by a razor-thin 482 votes. How did he do it in a district with a heavy conservative lean? By capturing 70% of the mailed ballots. A targeted mail-in ballot machine completely dominated the election.
This has sparked a full-blown mail-in arms race. Strategists are fiercely debating the best playbook. Do you win by relying on local, working-class candidates with deep community roots like the detective in the Mon Valley? Or do you nationalize the race with out-of-state cash and build a relentless, highly organized mail-in ballot machine? Because the data is starting to prove that whoever controls the mail-in pipeline essentially controls the swing state.
Meanwhile, the hangover from that 130-day budget standoff is just starting to hit. That $50 billion compromise budget they finally signed actually lit a massive fiscal time bomb. To fund the deal, the state is currently burning through $3.9 billion in general fund balances, plus another $1.5 billion in lapsed agency funds. That creates a staggering $5.1 billion structural deficit. As spending outpaces revenues, these state reserves are projected to be completely drained in just 12 to 24 months, forcing a brutal future choice between massive spending cuts or major tax increases.
And that makes the forward-looking math for the upcoming 2026 midterms, where every single one of those 203 House seats is on the line, absolutely terrifying. The historical Democratic voter registration safety net has basically vanished. It plummeted from an advantage of over 666,000 in 2020 down to just over 170,000 today. Neither party has a guaranteed safety net anymore.
It perfectly captures this incredible reality. In a political landscape divided by inches, a single empty seat can dictate the direction of an entire state. We are quite literally watching hyper-local dynamics playing out in shrinking industrial towns control massive multi-billion-dollar state-level machinery.
So, with 2026 rapidly approaching and the entire political playbook being rewritten in real time, the ultimate question we have to ask is, who really holds the power right now? The candidates themselves or the machines that collect the ballots?
An investment in knowledge pays the best interest, so why not invest in this channel? Click like and subscribe for more.